Most wrestling games attempt to replicate the professional wrestling experience as closely as possible. From 1989's WWF WrestleMania for the NES right up to WWE 2K22 on modern hardware, they try to represent the televised product as best as the available technology allows. However, for some developers, the bizarre world of cheap shots and chairs to the head just wasn't enough, and they decide to add stranger and stranger ingredients to the mix in order to stand out.
Yeah.
Off game!
This was usually a terrible idea, resulting in titles like the oft-discussed and critically panned The Simpsons Wrestling. We've talked about that game loads, however, so you won't find it on this list. In fact, you are going to find a lot of things that are weirder and some things that might be even worse. You've been warned. Anyway, I'm 3-time TripleJump backyard wrestling champion Ben, and here are the 10 strangest wrestling video games of all time. Number 10. Backyard wrestling, don't try this at home. Did you watch wrestling when you were growing up? Did you have a sibling who was either younger, smaller, or both? If so, then chances are that said sibling has been subjected to various dangerous wrestling moves, including flying elbows, running clotheslines, choke slams, and even a hurricane rana or two. Take that standard childhood horseplay, move it into the back garden, and ramp up the violence horrifically, and you've got backyard wrestling. Backyard Wrestling Don't Try This at Home and its sequel allows players to delve into the world of hardcore amateur wrestling, where ladies and gentlemen of questionable mental stability do unthinkable things to each other with barbed wire, light tubes, and furniture. This was based on an actual phenomenon that peaked in popularity during the late 90s and early 2000s. Yes, people actually do this stuff in real life. The games have a little bit of star power behind them too, featuring the likes of hip-hop duo Insane Clown Posse and 2-time ECW World Heavyweight Champion Sabu. Still, just because celebrities do this sort of thing doesn't mean that normal, rational people should. If you feel the need to jump off a shed and through a table, probably best to do it in the virtual world. Number 9. WWE Crush Hour. This THQ-published WWE tie-in game was released in 2003 when the likes of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock were still showing up to do some grappling on a more or less regular basis. It combines the familiar world of sports entertainment with the brutal metal-on-metal mayhem of vehicular combat. In WWE Crush Hour, players choose from a roster of over 30 WWE superstars, all with a unique set of wheels that is vaguely themed around their personality or attire. The action unfolds in arenas based on WWE shows and match types, and the aim of the game is to blast your opponents with your mounted guns until you're the only wrestler left standing, or driving. It's kind of like that WCW monster truck match between Hulk Hogan and the Giant, only with guns, and someone doesn't fall off a building at the end. Unfortunately, WWE Crush Hour didn't win over many critics, and it was unanimously agreed that the game paled in comparison to Combat Racer series Twisted Metal. Still, Twisted Metal didn't have commentary by WWE legend Jim Ross, did it? No, it didn't. That might be yet another reason Twisted Metal did so well. Number 8. Def Jam Vendetta. Combining hip-hop with wrestling isn't anything new, from AEW's Platinum Max to the unseeable one himself, and even all the way back to Men on a Mission's Oscar in the mid-90s, grapplers aren't afraid to enter the ring to a funky hip-hop beat from time to time. Back in 2003, though, EA decided to take this combination to its logical conclusion with Def Jam Vendetta. In the story mode, players choose from one of 4 protagonists and then embark on a quest to reach the top of the underground fighting league, taking on personalities such as Ludacris, DMX, and Redman as they progress. Playing similarly to the likes of WWF No Mercy, Def Jam Vendetta is a dream come true for those who love the raps as much as they love the graps. There was also a sequel that continued the story. Def Jam Fight for NY was released in 2004 but added different fighting styles such as kickboxing and martial arts, straying away from the straight-up wrestling of the first game. That's not for me though. I'm proud to be a rapping wrestling purist. Number 7. WrestleQuest and Wrestling Cardboard Championship. We're going to talk about 2 upcoming wrestling oddities at once now. That's right, it's a 2-for-1 entry. That's what you get here at TripleJump. Value for money. WrestleQuest and Wrestling Cardboard Championship are both, at the time of recording, still upcoming games, but we couldn't leave them out of a list like this as they are both clearly totally bonkers. First is WrestleQuest, which takes the crazy world of professional wrestling and turns it into a top-down, turn-based RPG detailing a young wrestler's journey to the very top. The characters have been made to visually resemble old wrestling action figures, the likes of which you've probably got somewhere under your bed or in a box in the attic. It's almost like WrestleQuest is trying to recreate the feel of your childhood childhood itself, bashing your Ultimate Warrior and Ted DiBiase figures together and making fighting noises, only with an RPG battle system and a meaty story to back it up. We're all for that. The second game yet to make its in-ring debut asks a question that literally no one has ever asked before. What if wrestlers were cardboard boxes? Developer Evil Geometry has an answer, but I think it's more confusing than the question itself was. Wrestling Cardboard Championship at least gives the humble cardboard box its time to shine. We don't know much about this one, and somehow we get the feeling that we'll know even less after playing it. That's not going to stop us though, it never does. Number 6. Hulk Hogan's Main Event. You know what sounds like a horrible combination? Microsoft's ill-fated Kinect controller and wrestling. Although, to be fair, Kinect and anything sounds like a horrible combination.
Good Skittles.
Hindsight is a gift though, and back in 2011, someone at American developer Panic Button must have seen some potential in the area. Enough, even, to secure Hulk Hogan's now questionable image. The result was Hulk Hogan's Main Event. In the game, the big yellow walrus of wrestling teaches your customizable protagonist the ins and outs of becoming a wrestling superstar.
Oh my god!
Hogan will teach you about moves, poses, and showmanship, equipping you with the tools to win over the crowd and providing pointers from the master. Your job is to stand in front of your TV and imitate Hogan's gestures as you take your created wrestler from performances in school gymnasiums to packed arena events. The concept alone isn't all that bad, but unfortunately, Hulk Hogan's Main Event didn't work.
This is the real Dark Souls.
Just let it settle.
It got rightly lambasted by critics, including us on Worst Games Ever, with reviewers decrying its ugly visuals and boring career mode. It sits at a shocking 26% on Metacritic. That still makes it one of the better Kinect games though, right?
Oh no.
Number 5. Celebrity Deathmatch. Here's another game that critics near unanimously verbally suplexed through a table. Following the concept of the extremely lowbrow MTV show, Celebrity Deathmatch presents caricatures of varying levels of famous people in animated clay form and tasks them with brutally murdering in ways that vaguely resemble professional wrestling. Players choose from a roster of personalities ranging from Justin Timberlake to Dennis Rodman and then proceed to enact bodily harm on their opponents until it's time to rip off little clay limbs and rupture little clay internal organs. The game does have character-specific special moves, but these are all superfluous. Hammering the controller with your forehead will usually be enough to see you through. Again, Celebrity Deathmatch didn't exactly wow critics, with reviewers finding the gameplay insultingly simple and the humor outdated. Perplexingly, it was released about 3 years after the popularity of the Celebrity Deathmatch TV show was at its peak. It's not fully understood why it released so late, but it's safe to assume that those 3 years weren't spent polishing the gameplay. Number 4. Micro League Wrestling. Back in the Commodore 64 days, most fans took their professional wrestling very seriously, and matches between the likes of Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter were life-or-death situations. This wrestling game for the Commodore 64 treats professional wrestling pretty seriously too, providing a strategic turn-based take on the action. Holding the privilege of being the very first licensed WWF game, Micro League Wrestling gave players the opportunity to rewrite famous matches. During gameplay, the action is depicted using digitized photos from the real events, with text commentary from the likes of Bobby the Brain Heenan and Vince McMahon himself displayed on screen. Players choose a move from a list, the computer opponent chooses its move, some behind-the-scenes mathematics presumably happens, and then one of the moves will connect. Repeat until someone gets pinned. The base game came with only 2 playable matches, one on either side of the disc, with expansion packs releasing later to add more content. If you had enough of Hulk Hogan vs Randy Savage and wanted to try your hand at Jake the Snake Roberts vs Ravishing Rick Rude, then it was time to put a new disc in and enjoy the excruciatingly long loading times. Spare a thought for the poor wrestling game fan of yesteryear, won't you? They had it rough. Number 3. WWF with Authority. In these days of mobile games and the likes of WWE Supercard, card-based wrestling games don't seem all that unusual anymore. In 2001 though, it was a pretty novel concept. WWF with Authority later changed to WWE with Authority after that company had to give the F to the pandas, was an online card game. Players used cards to build a playbook based on their chosen superstar, and then used the playbook to unleash moves and abilities against their opponents. The game was free to download, but enticed players to purchase playbooks, booster packs, and expansions once they started playing, which is a model that we're still seeing frequently in modern gaming. There was even a retail version that came with a William Regal starter playbook. Seems a bit disrespectful to brand Regal as a starter, but I suppose they had their reasons for besmirching his lordship. Evidently, With Authority is still supported to this day through unofficial means, so if you're interested in some card-based WWE fun, a bit of light Googling should sort you out. Or you could play WWE Supercard, but that's your decision to wrestle with. Number 2. Rumble Roses. Rumble Roses was released for the PlayStation 2 in 2004. It was developed by Yuke's, the team responsible for the official WWE wrestling games right up until 2019. Using the same engine as 2003's WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, this Yuke's side project is a fairly standard wrestling experience, at least as far as the base gameplay is concerned. It does have an identity all of its own though. Rumble Roses, like its 360 exclusive sequel Rumble Roses XX, ditches male wrestlers altogether, concentrating on an entirely female roster and banking on that oh-so eye-catching sex appeal. This is probably most apparent in the humiliation moves, where competitors tie each other up in complicated submission-style maneuvers that are designed to look as, compromising as possible. Rumble Roses did have at least one legitimately cool idea though. Each character has a heel and face persona, that's good guy and bad guy for the uninitiated, with different outfits and movesets to match. For example, would you rather be naughty nurse anesthesia or sinister surgeon anesthesia? I bet that's a choice you didn't think you'd be making today, just as those are words I didn't think I'd be saying today. Number 1. WWF Betrayal. Putting a whole different spin on the old Rescue the Princess trope, WWF Betrayal is a 2001 Game Boy Color game in which players must rescue billion-dollar princess Stephanie McMahon. That's right, the daughter of WWF CEO Vince McMahon has been kidnapped, and the boss has offered a title shot to the wrestler who can defeat the bad guys and bring her back. WWF Betrayal is a side-scrolling beat-em-up in the vein of something like Double Dragon or Renegade, in which the player's chosen grappler kicks and punches his way through various levels, beating up henchmen, other wrestlers, and apparently referees on the way to save poor Stephanie. The final confrontation takes place on a rooftop with Stephanie stuffed into a helicopter nearby. High drama for sure. The player can choose between The Rock, Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Undertaker, and the story will change slightly depending on who you picked. Just remember, these are the McMahons we're dealing with, so I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that there just might be a double crossing coming. That's right, it was he all along, Austin. The story isn't great, well, obviously, but kudos for retaining the showmanship.